Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Trinidad and Tobago's National Security Minister confident of winning the war on illegal guns. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Friday, 28th April 2023. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. Trinidad and Tobago's National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines says he is confident that Trinidad and Tobago and the wider region will win the fight against illegal firearms. This, as the first Caribbean Firearms Study 2023 confirms that the rate of violent deaths in CARICOM member states is almost triple the global average, with Trinidad and Tobago featuring prominently in its findings. TV6's Renessa Cutting reports.
The first evidence-based study on the illegal firearms trade in the Caribbean paints the region in blood, with TNT vying neck and neck with one of its CARICOM neighbors for first place.
In terms of murder rates, the country that of course stands out in the Caribbean region is Jamaica, and in 2020 Jamaica had a rate of 44.7 homicides per 100,000. In the case of Trinidad and Tobago in 2020 the rate was 28.5, but as we know we have had a recent increase from that, where in 2022 we had 605 murders, putting us at a rate of 43.2 per 100,000 population, which is just slightly under that of Jamaica.
Still, National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines remains optimistic in the face of these deadly statistics.
Considering the conglomeration of skills and talent and experience, I feel confident that this is a war that we must win and that we will win.
The study finds that 78% of murders in this country are committed with illegal firearms, and as indicated by the recovered weapons, the vast majority are handguns and pistols, with automatic rifles accounting for just 10% of weapons seized. But there's another emerging concern, that of conversion devices.
Simple, easy-to-use devices that convert semi-automatic pistols and rifles into fully automatic firearms. Trinidad and Tobago, as you can see in this table, has seized a number of those since 2020, and so they are clearly circulating in the region.
The Small Arms Survey says the presence of such devices points to a phenomenon called ghost guns, meaning guns which are not produced in factories, but are instead privately made. But National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines admits little is known of this.
Due to underreporting, the true proliferation of privately made firearms using 3D technology, due to such underreporting, these privately made firearms, otherwise known as ghost guns, remains largely unknown.
The report also supports the fact that the U.S. remains the primary source of these firearms.
The U.S. mainland is a major source of illicit firearms. However, we also find that it's a more complicated picture than it can seem at first sight. For example, 22% of firearms that are successfully traced to the U.S. And are found to be of U.S. origin were actually first legally exported to foreign entities before being diverted or trafficked into the Caribbean. So it's a more nuanced picture than what is perhaps sometimes reported.
Renessa Cutting, TV6 News.
The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank opened its 7th Growth and Resilience Dialogue 25th April with presenters and discussions centered on the topic an appropriate and sustainable model for healthcare in the ECCU OECS, agile infrastructure, traditional medicine, and medicinal cannabis. Supporting the program are the University of the West Indies, the World Bank, and the Commission of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. Glenn Bart of SKN Newsline has more.
To achieve resilience and sustainability in health and medicine, the dialogue focused on multifaceted approaches, including the use of technology, substantial collaboration, research, and the integration of traditional medicine, as well as the need to make significant progress in developing effective medical cannabis industries. St. Kitts and Nevis' Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew, in delivering the featured address, also pointed to the need for the sub-region to establish centers of excellence in health and medicine.
When many of our people have to access specialized care, on many occasions they have to travel abroad where care is extremely expensive. Those who lack the financial resources or don't have appropriate health insurance go without care or substandard care. I have seen patients who might have had a chance to live, but they die because of lack of access. We can therefore consider, and I hope that this gets to the other heads, and I intend to bring this also at the CARICOM level as its chief spokesperson for health, we can consider establishing a center of excellence on each island or territory that each of us can have access to. Break it down into simple terms. St. Kitts and Nevis can have a center of excellence for cardiac diseases, heart disease. St. Vincent might be able to have one for gastrointestinal issues. Antigua might be able to have one for neurological diseases. What I'm simply saying here, that it calls for collaboration and a shared vision that we need to provide for our people in this sub-region top-class healthcare. But we are too small for each of us to carry that burden. And if we share the burden, then there are greater possibilities that within this sub-region, we can have centers of excellence that can serve all of our people.
Embracing the use of artificial intelligence along with appropriate policies and legislative frameworks are also key for the sustainability and resilience to be achieved in health in the sub-region. Glenn Bart reporting for SKN Newsline.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. St. Lucia's Prime Minister Philip J. Pear has announced the introduction of a new levy. The Health and Security Levy will be a tax on goods and services with some exceptions and will come into force on July 21st, 2023. This new levy will help finance healthcare and security initiatives. The new levy and VAT relief on some items were announced by the Prime Minister as he delivered his budget address on Tuesday. Zane Romulus of the DBS News World reports.
Starting from July 1st, 2023, we shall impose a health and security levy of 2.5% on goods and services.
In an effort to maintain the gains made in the economy and to stimulate further economic growth, the Prime Minister has proposed the introduction of a health and security levy. The new 2.5% levy will be applied on goods and services except food items, medicines, selected building materials, and medical and security equipment. While this levy bears similarities to the value-added tax, which is currently being applied at 12.5% on goods and services, the revenue generated from it will be used specifically to finance the health and security needs of the nation. The government has projected that some $33 million will be raised through this levy. The Prime Minister has stressed that the health and security levy will be implemented to have a minimum inflationary impact, especially on the cost of food.
Let me be very clear. This levy will not be imposed on any food items. Let me be clear. This levy will not be imposed on any food items. Nous pas qu'à mettre pièce levy à sous manger. This levy will not be imposed on any food items. This means, Mr. Speaker, that the cost of food should not change because of the levy, unless prices increase from overseas.
The new tax will also be executed to avoid any additional administrative burden and cost to businesses, says the Prime Minister.
I am urging the private sector to work with the government to ensure that this measure is not used as a basis for increasing the price of food. We expect, Mr. Speaker, that as freight charges come down, food prices and other imported items prices will also decrease.
In addition to the new levy, the Prime Minister also announced the suspension of VAT on select building materials for a period of 2 years, with the expectation of stimulating activity in the housing and construction sector.
Plywood, lumber, steel, cement, and galvanized. This means, Mr. Speaker, that the retail price of these items should be reduced by 12.5% unless the imported price of these changes increase.
To ensure businesses comply with the new levy and the VAT removal on the building materials, the government will engage in a price monitoring exercise, says the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, excise tax on tobacco products will be increased by 50% from May 21st, 2023. For the DBS Newsworld, I am Zane Romulus.
The government of Jamaica targets social intervention for youngsters in crime. Nika Lewis of CVM Live has this report.
The country's security minister, in decoding reasons for the last 6 months of reduction in major crimes, notes the government's continued investment in resourcing the police to take on evolving criminal networks. However, he notes they've been using research and trends to identify the best approach in curbing those inclined to deviant behaviors. Of concern, he highlights a particular group.
The critical age group we're dealing with is 25 to 44. They're the primary perpetrators and the primary victims. In 2022, 63% of murder perpetrators fell into the age group 25 to 44, and 52% of all murder victims. This age group is not one that we try to send back to school. We have to deal with efficient and effective policing. When you look at the bar chart, it's almost a mirror image of the other. 25 to 44 is the group. Our social activism and transformation efforts, we want to go to those that are between 12 and 15 and 17 in particular. The 17 to 25 age group pose a particular problem which we have identified.
The minister provided an eye-opening explanation.
They are not yet old enough. Most of them don't have children. They have no responsibility. They are fearless. And they are used by the gangs as the shutters. And that's a dangerous group, but we do think some of them can be rescued.
And despite many critics of the repeated states of emergency, Dr. Chang maintains the data shows constant drops in crimes after an SOE, the most notable of them being post the 2010 SOE, after which he says criminals suffered a major blow. He says experts agree the criminals took a while to recover. However, he notes that criminals have teamed up now, taking on more organized activities.
So we find gangs taking the best drivers from one area, or the driver who knows the area well. They find shutters from another area. Others organize and spy out on a particular event, give time, etc. We have been able to get that much intelligence. The fact is that while we have built up intelligence and we continue to improve and expand this, the criminals only have succeeded once to create to change the national mood and create some level of fear throughout. Many have been intercepted, but those are not the ones unknown. And this, as I have often said, fighting crime is like public health. When you fail, it's a major problem. When you succeed, it is taken for granted.
Nika Lewis, CVM Live.
Hubbard's is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbardshardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.